This is me, a Swedish woodworker, and here's a confession I'm reluctant to tell. I'm a fraud. Or at least I feel like one. I say that I'm a woodworker, but what it really comes down to, I feel like I'm cheating. Because without these, I couldn't do anything. I'm dependent of 3D printers to do my woodworking. I cheat by using them to do the hard stuff. I do think every workshop needs a 3D printer, and here's why. This device can do more than you think, and the best part, it isn't hard. It's so easy I asked my wife to try it out, someone who's never done any of it, just heard my praises. I'll tell you how you can get started and why you should, and how to avoid the most common failures. Yes, I'm trying to convince you. I don't want to cheat alone. I'll tell you where the 3D printer really shines, but also where they honestly kind of suck. The biggest mistake people make with 3D printers is thinking that they're for making stuff. They're not just that, they're for making solutions. They might not be the best for making furniture, but they are amazing at making that one weird part that doesn't exist. And to me, it's become a tool to achieve what I want to achieve in the workshop. But how hard are they to use? Let's start here. This is a brand new Bambu Lab P2S. I haven't unboxed this yet, and I won't, because I will let my wife do it. This printer is going to her school, so she needs to learn it. That's why she's doing it. I didn't help her at all, I just left her with the task of unboxing and getting started. But what she didn't know was that I would force her to learn something she asked of me many years ago. When I bought my first printer, I did so without consulting her. I just bought it with our combined savings. That time when she asked me how much it was, I of course didn't tell her the entire truth. And then she confessed that she also purchased something without asking, a garden bench. But then she saw an immediate opportunity and asked if that printer could make small cups to protect the garden bench feet from water. And I said of course without knowing how. But that small task pushed me to learn CAD modeling, and I found it only fitting that I forced her to learn that herself now that she's bringing 3D printers to her occupation as a teacher. The next step in any workshop would be to start a print. How do we do that? Well, it's not that hard, and there are many websites hosting files for print. Since this is a Bambu Lab printer, they have an app which you can use to search and start prints. Or you can visit their website online and import the print into what is called a slicer. There are many different websites to download prints from and many different slicers, but the reason I prefer Bambu Lab... Whoa, quick pause here. Okay, he's sponsored by Bambu Lab, so this is a sponsored video. I know the comments. But the fact of the matter is, I sold all my printers and bought Bambu printers long before they sponsored me. To me, it's extremely important to show only the products that I really like to the audience, meaning you. Because if I don't, I'll lose all the trust in one go. I use Bambu Lab printers because of their reliability and the precision and the user friendliness. It just works. I'm interested in 3D printing, not 3D printers. If you want to mess about with print heads and stuff like that, buy an Ender. And that's why when they reached out and wanted to sponsor my videos, that was just a lucky thing. Of course I would. I already use the machines. With that said, this goes for all printers. You need a file, and the file is basically a 3D geometry like this one. But the printer can't handle these files. They need to know how to print it. That's where the slicer comes in. The slicer will do exactly that, and of course you can change the settings to accommodate your prints, and here are my preferred settings. For strength, I tend to change the wall count to 3 or 4. This will increase the print time slightly, but also the overall strength of the piece. Another thing to increase the strength is to change the infill, the amount of plastic printed inside of the walls and pockets, and you can also change the infill type, the way the printer does the infill on. There are of course a ton of other settings, but as a beginner, you don't have to think about that. That's for the next step of the learning curve. Okay, we have a printer, we have the print sliced and ready for print. Now we need some plastic. There are a ton of different types of filament. They all have pros and cons, but for the most part, I print in PLA. PLA prints easy and is usually plenty strong for the things I use it for. PETG is another pretty easy to print in filament. To get started, I would suggest using PLA and then dive down the rabbit hole of different types of filaments. But one thing to consider when purchasing a 3D printer is if you want the print to be more robust. For example, this is ABS-GF, a filament that requires more nozzle temperature and an enclosure. You would need a printer that can print that. And then there's the price. Sometimes you will get lucky getting cheap filament, but most often I would suggest finding a good solid option. And finally, I want to say something about drying filament. People will say you will need to dry it, and they are half right. But I'm a pretty heavy consumer of materials and I leave them on a shelf for long periods of time, and I almost never have any issues. Sure, if you want to avoid stringing from, say, PETG, you can of course try drying the filament, but you don't need it when you're starting out. You don't need it. You can just print in PLA and you'll be fine. Okay, so whilst I've been rambling on about this, my wife has been left alone with her computer and Bamboo Studio, which is the name of the slicer. And she figured out how to send the print to the 3D printer. And that's basically all you need to get going. But what about the price? How much does it cost? And what can you print in a workshop? And why do we need one? Well, I will get back to that shortly, but first, remember I said I would force my wife to try out CAD modeling? Well, I gave her a quick lesson in drawing, and after just a couple of minutes, she knew how to draw that tiny bench cup and had it printed. For CAD modeling, I use Autodesk Fusion. Fusion is a program free for personal use from Autodesk, and getting started is easier than you think. Learning this was basically the same as learning to 3D print. I learned in small chunks. Whenever I needed something, I learned how to make just that, and whilst the program might look terrifying the first time, here's an extremely quick breakdown of what it is. You simply think of your thing as a two-dimensional object to start with. That's how I sketch out what I want. I can keep reiterating the design until I'm happy. When I'm happy, I turn that two-dimensional object into three-dimensional by extruding it. And then I can go back and do another sketch from another plane or from another position. And when I'm done, I send it to my slicer and then straight to the printer from there. I'm telling you this because what might seem really hard isn't. But if you don't want to model yourself, you don't need to, because there are so many files to print online. Let's break it down. This is what I usually do when I need to find out if a file exists or not. I just Google it. Usually that gives me an idea whether it exists or not. Sometimes the image search even gives the answer. So let's go as specific as a Bosch to Festool vacuum adapter. And what do you know? It exists. Joking aside, usually the files actually exist and all you need to do is print and have fun. But if they don't, there are of course other people you can hire to make those files for you. So what can you use the 3D printer for as a maker? They can be great for woodworkers and makers in general. So let me talk about why they are amazing for woodworkers. Like for a drill guide, alignment jigs or router guides. This is where the 3D printer shines. If you have ever thought I would need a thing to hold a clamp at this exact angle, that's a perfect use case for a 3D printer. These are all 3D prints that I've used in my workshop. A simple drill guide just to get the hole in the exact location, especially if you want to do it repeatedly, and sometimes a wooden jig can be made for that quicker than a 3D print, but the upside is I can do the other things when the 3D printer is printing. Or I can have it printing whilst I'm sleeping if I have planned the project well enough. But where it really shines is if you want to have a certain angle on the drill guide. It can be quite hard to make that drill guide, but this is a 3D print I made. This is for making a dowel stool, so if I drill the holes with the matching drill bit, I can get the holes drilled in the perfect angle, without having to measure that out myself. I get 3 equally spaced holes in the correct angle right away. Pretty sick. And I had this idea to use the printer to achieve this stool with a couple of simple jigs, but more about that later. Another win with the 3D printer for me has been being able to make lamps. It's incredible that we can just make them ourselves. And there is a lamp I really want, but I haven't been able to find it, so I drew up a similar thing myself. This uses 3 dowels as legs. So I printed this attachment where I can press fit the dowels into the print. I could use glue here, but the friction seemed good enough for now. Then there was the lampshade itself. I printed that in one go with a little bit of supports removed. That was ready to be attached with a bolt and a wing nut. When trying this out for the first time, I made a white version and then realized that the lamp would shine through the plastic in a way I didn't really like, so I tried spraying the inside with white paint, and that was really hard to get an even coat. The problem is that white filament isn't opaque, and that is usually perfect for lamps, but not when I want to direct the light. The black lamp won't shine as much since there's very little reflection on the inside, but it still looks quite good. If you want to print this though, there's a file on MakerWorld. Another big win for me is to use the 3D printer to achieve organization in my workshop. This entire cabinet has a bunch of these tiny boxes, and the good thing about these are that they fit the sustainer I have here at the bottom perfectly. So whenever I'm going somewhere, I can collect the things I need and take those containers with me in the sustainer. And the good thing is that the screws won't fall out in the sustainer because these are all printed to fit perfectly. In my drawers, I have custom holders for some of the tools, not for everything, that would be insane, but for the most used ones. And that just gives me more control. If you have a French cleat wall, you could print a bunch of holders for that as well. Workshop organization is where 3D printing feels like cheating. You stop adapting your tools to the storage and instead adapt the storage to your tools. I like that saying. And the reason you really want to get a 3D printer is future-proof, because one of my predictions for the future is that we will see more and more companies release replacement parts and accessories for their products. For instance, Festool jumped on that idea long ago and already have a bunch of files online for download. I just got myself a new car, Dacia Duster, and they have something called U-Clip. Small attachment points throughout the car where you can of course buy attachments and place there, but you can also 3D print them yourself. And if the companies don't do it themselves, more and more files are available and the shift is here. We can make the parts ourselves. Here's another hack for anyone with a remote for their dust collection. I bought these cheap remotes on Amazon. They can be programmed to any machine basically. So I programmed them to work with my dust collector and then I could place them all over the workshop. That way I don't have to keep track of the one remote that came with the machine. And to keep the remotes visible, I 3D printed a tiny keyring with a magnet inside. That way I can have them on all my machines where I can easily start and stop the dust collector from all over the workshop. Okay, back to the stool. After having drilled the holes in the seat, and if you want to know how I achieved the seat, I simply glued two pieces of pine together and then made a circle with the shaper origin. Because sometimes the easiest isn't to make a jig for this. It is using whatever I have. I used the shaper to make my circle, and then I finished the circle with the router table and a flush trim bit. But it wasn't without issues. First there was a bit that broke. I don't know where it went. Then I had to restart the cut and accidentally set the cut to inside the circle I had drawn, so it doesn't look perfect, but we'll fix that later. I wanted to have a slight curve to the seat, so I actually made myself a router sled for that. It was a basic jig and a basic idea, but I would love to make this better in the future. When that was done, I used a bunch of 3D printed drill jigs to drill holes in the dowels to create the correct points for attaching all the dowels together. Again, measuring all of this is possible, but the 3D printer helped me out in making the jigs quite easily. Now, this didn't turn out perfect. Why? Because some of the jigs I made were quite stupid, like the leg drilling jig. I had to cut it apart. And the seat drill jig needs to be improved to do multiple chairs, and I need better sized drill bits, and all in all, I cheated my way to make this. But if I were to perfect the jigs, I bet I would get there. And then there's the repeatability. If I was selling these tools, I would be able to make them quicker with these prints. And if I really want to make the jigs last, I can of course combine them with steel inserts for the drill holes. But with that said, not everything should be 3D printed, or even can be 3D printed. Sometimes the best solution is a scrap of plywood and 2 screws. It's quicker and simply a better solution. But just to give you another example.
I'm gonna tell you that I love you 100 times a day. You'll get tired of my voice, that's how much I'm gonna tell you that I'll miss you. I'll miss you if you go. Yes, I'm gonna let you know just how much I tell you, mama. tell you that I need you. I need you every day. You'll get weary of my touch. That's how much I'm gonna tell you that I want you. I wanna let you know. Oh, you're the only one for me. No one else. I'm gonna shout it out. Yeah, up on the mountaintop. I'm gonna let everyone know about my love. So I really hope you love me too. Yeah, I really hope you love me too. Oh, there's something deep inside, yeah, that really makes me wanna.
So what's my recommendation? Well, my recommendation is get a 3D printer. Do your research and find what's best for you. But here's my take after trying a lot of 3D printers since 2018 and onwards. If I were getting a 3D printer today, I would get one with an enclosure like this one. Unfortunately, this isn't mine. Because of the enclosure, it can print most of the filament types you want. And it's perfect with the enclosure for the dusty environment, of course. But to anyone who asks me who's just starting out, I always recommend the A1. It's cheap, it's reliable, and it's so user-friendly. My kids use one. That's how easy they are. And the price of this one is only $399 for the combo. And honestly, it's hard to find anything cheaper, but if you do, there will be a difference in user experience. So if you're in the market of getting started, the A1 is a great machine. And let's talk about the AMS system. What is that? What this does is it gives you the ability to print in multiple colors. Now, in the workshop, I don't need this very much. But of course, it's nice to have the ability to be able to print in multiple colors if I want to. You could get the printer without the AMS, cheaper of course, and then you can always add it on if you change your mind. Now, whatever you do, stay away from the ender. Poof, did I say that? I know it looks cheap, but it's more of a project than a 3D printer. Now, what about the size? It matters, right? Yes, it does. For the lamp, of course, I needed a bigger printer, and the H2S did the lampshade for me. The lamp would be bigger than the print bed of this, so I wouldn't be able to print that lampshade on this printer. But a lot of the time, most files can be sliced up in parts and printed anyways, and combined later with glue or whatever. And you can do that all in the slicer of your printer. Because getting a printer like that is a big leap in cost. I might be a fraud. I might be a fraud, cheating my way to make better things. But also, I love it. So I guess I will keep that behavior for now. Yeah, I will.